Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have so many of you here. This is an event that is sold out in days for us, pretty much. And so we're really happy to have all of you with us. And we're even happier to have Rhianna Walcott here with us. So thank you so much, Rhianna, for joining us. Let me just get your bio up so I can give you a nice little introduction. So Rhianna Walcott is Director of Project Myopia. And is a PhD candidate for at King's College London, researching Black women's identity formation in digital spaces, and a graduate twice over from Edinburgh University, so a nice little local shout out there. She's a co-founder of Project Mytopia with, is it Toby? I believe that's right. Toby. And it's a website that promotes the inclusivity in academia and a decolonized curriculum. Now that's quite a lot for my mouth to get around first thing in the morning, but it's such an important project to be happening right now. So we're really glad to be welcoming Rhianna here with us this morning. So welcome, Rhianna. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for having me. This feels so full circle. It's beautiful.
It's great. We were just catching up before this, and we were saying how so Rhianna actually spoke at our Creatives Means Business conference back in, it must have been 3 years ago now, talking on mental health in the creative industries. Yes, a long time. And we also realized that we got a little celebration for Rhianna and the team, because it's your 4-year
anniversary.
So we could all give a little clap and a little, I don't know, a little dance or something, give a little acknowledgement of that, because that's 4 years is great for a project like this. So well done and congratulations.
Thank you so much. I know I've been talking about it lately. I've whenever someone asks me how old the project is, I'm like, we're almost 4. But then this morning I finally went back through all our pieces, and the first piece was posted on the 4th of March 2017. So here we are, still thriving, surviving.
Brilliant.
Institutions.
Damn right. Well, welcome. And I think we should just not waste any more time. Let's hear more about it. I think there's some people who have some awareness about the project, some people who maybe are not so aware. So take it away, share it with us, and we'll pick up some conversation afterwards.
Okay, let me take it. I'll take it from the top then. So welcome, hello. Thank you for the introduction. We are Project Myopia. We were almost 4 years ago. We started at Edinburgh University, funded by an Innovation Initiative grant, which is like the alumni funding pot. We started it while Toby and I were master's students at Edinburgh, and a little bit dissatisfied with the education we got. So we're currently funded by the London Arts and Humanities Partnership, which covers quite a few different universities in London. So the point of Project Myopia is always that we want to be stateless. We don't want to be too attached to any one institution, because the point is this is supposed to be an interdisciplinary project that is useful to everyone and is something that goes beyond just thinking about academia and the ivory tower in particular, but is more just about that good digital work of crowdsourcing a more diverse education. So, this is something that isn't just intended to be useful inside of the institution. It's something that's, for broadening all of us anyway. So we have several social media outputs, as everyone does. So we've got a Facebook page, but also a Twitter, an Instagram that started out as a bit of a bookstagram account that did short form reviews of creative materials of loads of different types, but now does a little bit more than that, sort of talks about events near you, or that's we kind of handle it like a little bit of a passion project between us. So check us out on Instagram with the Myopia Project there, and we're Project Myopia on Twitter. But most importantly is our website, which I'll show you a little later. I might screen share a little bit and have a look through. But the way that we work is that we ask students academics, anyone who's interested in writing for us, to write us a personal essay, ideally between 750 and 1,000 words, where they describe and recommend, and it says here a work of art, but I just mean a work created by a person from a marginalized community that is worthy of academic study. And the idea is that we are collaboratively trying to decolonize the institution, and we are collaboratively suggesting works that could make our studies better, like as a community. So we ask people to justify three main things. Why is the work relevant to them? Did they come across it while they were studying? And if not, how did they come across it? And most importantly, how would it fit into a university curriculum? Being as specific as possible. Can you suggest what kinds of courses it might be studied in? If there's an overlap between courses, we love like that whole interdisciplinary conversation. Like, is this something that belongs in more than one place? And also really just justifying why it's worthy of study at all. So some of the examples, the early examples that we have are things like Chewing Gum, the television series by Michaela Cole, Toyin Odutola's art, the album Kashmir by the Sweatshop Boys, and Quicksand and Passing by Nella Larsen. And what we do is, as you can see, we sort of hashtag these up based on sort of where they could fit. And so an educator looking at the site who's trying to inject some more diversity into their course might follow one of these hashtags. And instead of, so if you were looking at a literary modernism course, rather than reaching for James Joyce and T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound, you know, your standard cartel of old straight white men, you might want to go for Nella Larsen, who wrote Quicksand and Passing, and tends to be sort of pigeonholed into African-American women's writers or the Harlem Renaissance, or, you know, but always like Black women, American women, not even just American women, Black American women, and never really spoken about as anything else. Or, you know, the way that you know, queer writers and Black and white writers are sort of ghettoized into their own little categories, as though they weren't involved in any other movement and can't be representative of the canon. The only way you can be representative of the canon and a movement seems to be if you're an old white man. So we're trying to sort of break down that that way of thinking, sort of encourage people to think outside of such narrow boundaries. Talk about this, create this conversation about decolonization and the kinds of thought systems that we find ourselves in and that the institution tends to promote. So we're in context with, you know, like very key to understand what came before us and who's working alongside us. We're in context with a lot of other projects like this. So there was Why Is My Curriculum White at Leeds and UCL, one of the first ones to get like really great publicity. SOAS, Roads Must Fall at Oxford, Sussex's Decolonising Education at Edinburgh, our very own Liberated, and the Resisting Whiteness Conference at Edinburgh that's happened twice now. Decolonized Sociology at Cambridge. I should have here the Free Black Uni. Don't know why that's not there. You know, so many different projects that are working towards the same sort of thing. And our idea is that we would hope to be, rather than just being a project that encourages this change, we also want to provide solutions, which is why we've set ourselves up as like a database that, you know, the more people that contribute, the more useful it will end up being. So as projects, you know, as we grow, we just get more powerful. So the way that, you know, we're very, very interested in promoting this sort of student engagement and understanding education as a staff-student collaboration. We consider ourselves scholar activists, and we're really interrogating that idea of scholar activism. Whose duty is it to care about the environment that we study in? Whose duty is it to do this work? And we would say it's all of ours. We would say that it's important to make clear the chains of power and influence that exist in the colonial and imperial site that is our universities in the UK. you know, the way that the structures of the university are designed to ensure that certain people progress and attain and are retained by the academy, and certain people are pushed out. So we really try to make those sort of those chains very clear. Myself, I'm a PhD student still. I'm teaching now, but you know, not in charge of any course creation. I lead seminars, and you know, I'm very aware. And when I run workshops, I'm very aware that there's a certain level that I can ask people to be responsible for sort of creating, you know, appropriate environments in their classroom. But there's certain things that we aren't ready to do yet at our stage. So, you know, it's a case of making sure that we're speaking to the people who can make these kinds of radical changes and encouraging us to sort of, you know, when you're telling people at my kind of stage that this is the kind of work we should be doing, and, you know, getting them to think about decolonization, it's with the hope that in a few years, when we do start climbing up the academic hierarchy, that we remember these things and that we, you know, bring about a more collaborative and equitable environment in education. It's very important to mention that we pay all of our contributors. So we pay for our artwork and for our writing. So we are, you know, there's 750 to 1,000 words. We've got this is where our funding goes. We pay £50 a piece and £50 an artwork. So we try to encourage people to do both for their own piece. But we also have a team of editors that we pay, and all of our interns as well. So, you know, we also think it's really important to be, you know, we're always working on trying to make sure we've got more money so we can pay better. But like, I think it's important that this labor is understood as labor and as work that people are putting in outside of their own, you know, putting in off their own back, and, you know, because they are passionate about creating a space that they want to learn in and study in. Like, my motivation for doing this is because I want a university that I can breathe freely in and that I can exist in, and that wasn't as traumatic as, you know, as needlessly traumatic as it has been. So I'm just trying to make sure that this is like a better environment for me to live and work in, but also for people who come after me. So with that sort of understanding, it's important that the funding is there to ensure that that we can continue doing this work, because it isn't done for free. So aside from the obvious work of the way that the website works, we also run, so we believe that decolonization has to happen at like 3 different levels, or a few different levels, I should say. One is not just thinking about what we learn, as in changing the curriculum, but also thinking about who's in the classroom, in terms of, you know, who has the opportunities to be an academic, to be a scholar, and also thinking about the environment in which we learn. So it's pedagogy, the way that teaching is done, the curriculum, and also the pastoral care element of it. Like, how are we supporting people who are traditionally excluded from the academy so that they're able to stay in it? So we also run these Liberating the Classroom workshops for our teachers, to sort of think through how the classroom can be a space that we can exist in freely and happily, and that everyone gets a good education in that classroom. Because as things stand, I don't think that we're having the same classroom experiences. So I asked these sort of 3 broad questions, sort of to encourage that sort of radical outlook of how high can we aim when we're talking about changing this university. If money were no object, how would you redesign the university experience based on your own experience as a student or whatever? What would you like to see more of in the classroom? And then asking people if they feel comfortable to share some of their own experiences and how they manage that environment if they are a teacher, or how it was managed if they were a student, or inappropriately managed if that's the case. And that from that, we've managed to take these and build these scenarios that we then feed back to teachers, and we sort of we teach them about how to make sure that the classroom is a safe and liberated space. So some of these things are things that happen. This example in particular is something that happens quite repeatedly at Edinburgh University. Like, this is one that I was brought by many students over the years as like an event that was particularly traumatic for the Black students. So as a general trigger warning, we say that, you know, these scenarios discuss events in class that went wrong, with instances of racism, sexism, ableism, lack of support for survivors of sexual violence and queerphobia. We ask what went well, what went badly, how would they have resolved it, how should it have been resolved, anything differently that could have been done before, during, after class, blah, 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 blah. And so here's this example about teaching Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And it's a racist book, and but like one of the best works written in English, etc., etc. You're aware that the book has been criticized for its defense of the imperialism and the racist depictions of peoples of sub-Saharan Africa, but you're also aware that some scholars see the novel as a critique of the British Empire. In class, you want to open up discussion, so you ask the students to debate whether or not the novel is racist, and you encourage students to foster more complex readings, to suggest ways in which the novel is not racist. So of course, this puts you know, minority students in the class in a very awkward and uncomfortable position of having to sort of defend their own lived experience, of maybe having to argue against it for the grades, of you know, people playing devil's advocate about things as though they don't have real world contemporary implications. We're really trying to break down this idea that academia is separate and neutral and sort of floats above the real world, because it doesn't. The impacts and, you know, the impacts and influences of colonialism, post-colonialism, are very much inherent inside the classroom. These things are still happening. We're still living these issues, these problems that were inherent to the periods of time of the works we're talking about. So we're really just trying to make sure that that kind of awareness doesn't, like, that kind of academia doesn't suit most people. It doesn't work. Like, there is no neutral. We're trying to really destroy this idea of the neutral scholar, because in practice, the way that neutrality ends up working is it tends to be a white male perspective, a white male straight perspective, which of course is not everyone's perspective. So just, okay, I'm going to bring it to an end there because I've definitely talked for a really long time now. But if you'd like to get involved, please do email us here. Do take the time to check out the website. It's looking really great, if I do say so myself. So there's also interviews with different people. This is very much an interdisciplinary project. So I know we're all creatives here, or I assume we are, but this isn't just something that's relevant to the arts and humanities. It's also something that, you know, we're really trying to make sure that we're engaging with conversations about STEM and about other disciplines as well that don't necessarily lend themselves to easy conversations about decolonization. So yes, here are our handles, here's our website, and that's how to get involved.
And of course I was muted as soon as I said that. And I why does it keep doing that? Right, okay, let's get rid of that box. Thank you so much for that, Rihanna. It was such a great walkthrough. You kind of clearly have boiled it down to the simple thing, the simple parts of the machine. But you know, what you've been working on is really opened, I think, a lot of people's eyes to the possibilities of what education can look like. And for myself, I was just saying before this talk, I had a little browse myself, and I looked at the art tag on the website. So do check that out while you can, folks. And I learned, you know, several new things within minutes of looking through this. So it was really great to see things that have been put out there by people who are genuinely trying to widen the reach and widen the possibilities of what people can gain inspiration from and inform themselves with for the rest of their lives, and carry that forward into their careers as well. So it's, you know, it does start with education. So thank you so much for walking us through that. Obviously today we're talking about taking stock, is kind of our theme for today. And I think it's something that everyone has to do at some point when they realize that they're feeling uncomfortable in the situation, or they're feeling as if there's something that's been raised that they really feel the need to do something about. There is that moment of, right, how do I do this? What do I do about it? What is my mission? Where is the calling for me in this situation? I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that from your point of view with this project, because obviously you've got a very vested interest, but it's something that every creative goes through at some point in their career, whether it's that they are looking to change their career path, or they are looking to expand, or looking to collaborate. But there's really that opportunity to take a moment and think about how they're going to go about that, what their priorities are, and what they're trying to really get out of it. So I wonder if you could maybe walk us through a little bit of that.
So, I mean, that's a really interesting question about this sort of, and particularly as you've mentioned, we're coming up to our 4-year anniversary now. And I feel like taking stock of where we are as a project and what we want to do is something that we do really often. So I have a small team now. It's myself and we've got our team of like editors who, on a freelance basis edit the work for us. But like the core team is myself and 3 others who've been like, definitely would not be able to do this without. So, someone who manages our socials, someone who manages the emails and the commissions part, and also someone who manages, so this new intern I've got very recently that I got through King's. They have like a King's Civic Leadership Academy thing where they pay a student to get some work experience working with us. So, we've got Chinenye for like a huge chunk of time. And having this bigger team was such a turning point for me. Being able to have people to help, because now, so Toby's no longer working with us pretty much for the last couple of years. It's been just me. And that, losing that extra person who is focused on the large part of it, like vision, like where are we going? What are we hoping to get? What are we hoping to add to the project? Was really hard, because it meant I had to sort of get involved more than I wanted to with the day-to-day running of things, the mechanics of just keeping the site going, of, making sure that we're producing content, which meant that we weren't able to do the big picture things that I really wanted from us. So recently, I mentioned that we do these pedagogy workshops, but in fact, today is almost kind of like a trial run of our first. We've been invited back to Edinburgh University, where it all began, to give a workshop for the School of Literatures, Languages and Cultures, which is where Toby and I started. And I mean, I remember 4 years ago trying to talk to them about this and being treated very badly. So, 4 years later, we're now being invited back and paid to run a workshop that we basically begged them to give us the time for way back when. So like, to me, that is just the biggest marker of like, oh, we made it kind of thing. But I mean, at the same time, also, this is a project that isn't very expensive to run. We only need a little bit of money to keep the website going and to pay our contributors and staff and stuff. I don't get paid, unfortunately, because the condition of another part of why academia sucks is like a condition of the funding is that I don't pay myself, but whatever. So it's that kind of, like this kind of thing. Like, if this is going to be something that I can continue in the long term, which I really do want to do, it eventually has to be something that I don't have to keep just pouring money into and not, so I charge for my talks and things like that to sort of make up the gap. But, that's something that a creative really has to think about. And I do really, consider myself a creative. Like, I straddle this point between like doing a lot of academic work, but I'm also a journalist, and I also, I'm a jazz singer. So, all of this kind of stuff it's important as a freelancer and, you know, as someone who is in a very insecure job as well in academia, like who knows if staying on in academia, like for all the reasons that I've outlined. So in terms of numbers, for instance, out of the roughly 20,000 professors in the UK, only I want to say like 100 of them are Black men and like 27 of them are Black women. So, you know, that's like a sort of idea of like how the retention kind of works. Like when you're in a field like that and you can literally count the number of people who've made it to that level, like how can you be confident about being able to reach it yourself? You can't really. That's like, you know, a big dream kind of thing. So you do have to think about all of this stuff outside about the kind of things that are going to allow you to reach that point and your other options. So Project Myopia has definitely been that for me. It's the consistent, it's something that I've been doing the whole way through, you know, my academic career. It's something that I've been repeatedly year after year, you know, seeking funding. And now we've got a sort of, with LAP, I think the London Arts and Humanities Partnership, we've got a semi-permanent sort of funding base. So I think, you know, it's been wonderful not being able, having to worry about that. My cat's just come too.
He's trying to figure out what to do. I think you might be making an appearance in a minute.
Yes, like these are the kinds of questions like you do have to, like it's a repeated sort of what is our goal, where are we going? And we had a meeting last week actually as the team where we were asking about, you know, asking each other what our goal for decolonization looked like. What does that look like? What can we do? What are the things that we would like to achieve beyond just the minutiae, beyond just the running of the site and the going to different universities and yelling at them? Like what are we trying to do here? So one of the things that I've always wanted for our project is for us to be something that sort of connects all of the disparate projects that happen at different universities, because every uni has its own like decolonizing the curriculum movement. And it feels like they're all reinventing the wheel. And it just, I would love for us to be able to network and talk and present more of a united front so that we're actually keeping this conversation in the public eye. So we've got a conference coming up that will be running in April. What else? Yeah, just stuff like that. Like really, we want to like, we're even thinking about like publications. Like I really want to focus. So what I mentioned, we're thinking about pedagogy and curriculum, but I'm also interested in pastoral care, like making sure that minoritized students, when they get to university, aren't just like, here you go, because, you know, a lot of us tend to be like, I know myself, I was one of the first in my family to go to university. And there's a lot of implicit rules that you don't realize when you get there. Like I remember in my 4th year, I found out that and I found out from like a friend of mine who was a mature student and a white guy who had just like the whole way through from, you know, we'd been in the same class for 4 years and the whole way through, as a matter of course, he was asking for extensions on his work, because apparently Edinburgh University, I don't know if it's the case now, but in the English literature department, at least, you could get an extension for a week on your essay, no questions asked. You didn't even really have to prove anything. And I had no idea. And I think that there's like, this kind of thing is definitely very common. Like, I think there's an understanding of the university as being something that you can work, you can make work for you, that you can manipulate, that you can expect certain things of. That first time students or people who don't have legacies of scholars in their family or that sense of like entitlement don't necessarily know that they can access. So I think a really important part of this project is making sure that universities are transparent about what you can and can't get, what you are and aren't entitled to. So, you know, that's also something that I want Project Myopia to be able to achieve. So we want to, this is very new idea and I don't want anyone to steal it. So I'm telling you in confidence. And if I see one of you do it, I'll know. So I want us to create like a guide and like potentially get it published about, I don't know whether it's going to be a zine or a book or whatever, but I'm going to call it a guide to cheap planting. And it's going to be for incoming students who are, who might want to, and it might be something crowdsourced again, a la Project Myopia's aims, where you come in and you sort of, it gives a guide to the areas that a new student might need to know about. So myself as a student at Edinburgh, being in a predominantly white institution, I didn't know where to find my hair products. And I spent 4 years going down to London whenever I needed to go get black hair stuff or makeup or whatever. And, you know, like, I think that that would be a really useful thing for an institution to have, where, like, you know, if you're a student in London and you're just coming to London for the first time, someone needs to tell you that if you need to get your hair braided, you need to go to Peckham. Someone needs to tell you that if you're looking, you know, to find your community and you're, you know, you're South Asian, you might want to go to East London. And, you know, if you're Black, you want to go here and here. And, you know, these are the kinds of conversations that I think are important to make sure that we have, like, the fullest experience at university we can. Sorry, that was such a, but that's some of our future plans. That's some of the stuff I'm talking about when I think about taking stock and, like, where we want to go and what we want and, you know, what we have the capacity to do. And I think that's really only something you're capable of once you've gotten to a certain point, once the project is sort of running for itself a little bit. I don't know. I say this, we're 2 days away from our 4 years. Like, we'll see. Who knows? We've still got our next funding application to do anyway, though.
Well, it's one thing at a time, isn't it? And I mean, like, you know, 4 years in, you've clearly got a lot to look back on and a lot of learnings to take from the things that you've looked at as well as the learnings that you took in those initial stages to instigate the project in the first place. But it's important, I think, as part of this conversation, to acknowledge that, you know, everyone's experience, lived experience, is all applicable to what you can put through into your work. And I think that I'm sure many will agree that from everything that you're saying today, this project almost seems to encompass all of your values in kind of one place, if I can put a blanket term over it. But of course, there will be other things outside of that as well. But, you know, kind of in terms of this, this really unlocking of what education can look like and the opportunities that it can provide for so many people who have been marginalized out of the opportunities that are available more generally, but also, you know, there's so much more that can be generated with those people to create new opportunity for the next generations as well. So it's actually creating like a whole wing of opportunity that never existed before. It's like that door has been firmly locked and the key has been thrown somewhere far, far away. So it's really great to kind of hear you talk about it as someone who's kind of walked through the project and as it's progressed, but also with your personal experiences informing that. And I think that's something that many people can take away in terms of approaching their own work. You know, the determination to really create impact beyond your you know, just making money, I guess. And although, I mean, I saw a few comments in the chat there when you were talking about being paid or not being paid. There's a great there's a great unrest around the fact that you're not getting paid for what you do, because there's clearly a lot of impact and work that's going into it. And I can see nodding, smiling faces right now, kind of acknowledging that as well. I wonder how do you feel about what the future, I mean, you just talked a little bit about your plans, but what do you see, especially in the current times, you know, COVID, post-COVID, other times in the next, I guess in the next 10 years, what do you really see the impact of a project like this doing both for yourself, but also for the community that you're trying to support ultimately?
Well, I'm hoping that, well, I want us to become a bit more of a sort of what's the equivalent of a university household name, like that? I would like for us to be a little bit more of a go-to. We're kind of getting to that point where we're getting a lot more universities contacting us and stuff like that. But I think part of that is that we need to be a bit more, conscientious about our campus name. There we go. That's it. Big name on campus. So we have to be a bit more conscious about our outreach efforts and things like that. So that's I think that would be great, because a lot of places are going, oh, but how could we decolonize the curriculum? Who could we go to? Who is possibly doing this work? And like, it would be great in that sort of sense. I'd like us to become self-sustaining as well. I haven't been able to figure that out yet. So far, there is something quite galling about being reliant on funding from the very institution you're trying to change. So figuring out a better model, if anyone has any ideas, let me know. So that, a model for that is less contradictory would be nice. Although there is also something quite romantic, I think, about taking money from them and giving it and redistributing it. So I don't know, I'll have to see how I feel about it. Sorry, I've kind of lost the thread of the question again.
No, I think you've touched on it, and it's really what you've been speaking about today in more detail anyway. I just wanted to see if there was, just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that a little bit there. We've got a few Q&A questions, which I can see popping up in the chat, and I wonder if Kath or Becca could read those questions out to us so that we can answer those for the folks in the room.
Yeah, I've got them here. So the first one came through from Alex a bit earlier on, and she said she's interested in the contributor side of things. Did you and the team set up a sort of chart or criteria for accepting contributions on the site, or is it quite open? Do you put a call out for specific topics or leave it quite free?
So that's something, right. So we have a writer's pack, and we really don't put out any sort of boundaries on what, because we kind of want people to, like, especially when we first started, the sort of breadth of the contributions people get were so wonderful. And we don't want to accidentally tell people what is and isn't academic through our call out, if that makes sense. Like, I like seeing what people come up with and then twist. So the idea that someone could take something from, some of the stuff that you maybe wouldn't, again, it comes down to that conversation that a lot of universities accidentally encourage about, like, what is high and what is low culture. So if we were to say we want more about this, commission things as such, though we have commissioned. So one thing we've commissioned, for instance, is a series that someone pitched to us, is a series on utopias. And they're sort of thinking about, the traditional conversation about utopian literature, but whilst adding lots more sort of contemporary stuff. So one of the things that they started by talking about was Black Panther and the visions of utopia and Black excellence and things like that as seen in there. So, but saying that, we're very much, while we're starting to run these workshops for universities about decolonizing the curriculum, we want them to be able to communicate to us what they feel like they're missing. So the way that the hashtags work on the site is that it's very writer guided. So they tell us what, where they think it could fit. And maybe we get some threads from reading them, we go, oh, maybe it could fit here too. And then it creates this sort of nice digital database. But some of them are more sparsely populated than others. We tend to have very few people writing about decolonizing economics, stuff like that. We've had an interview about decolonizing medicine, but one or two, the hashtags that only have one or two pieces on them are going to be less useful. So we are sort of looking at getting feedback from institutions about courses in particular that they wish they had more content from us on. But again, that's all part of, we would need this to be more of a conversation, more of a staff-student collaboration. And so far, it's not really the established academics who are doing that. They're kind of
cat chaos happening.
What are you doing? So I do a cat. We've got joint custody because I just moved out of my old flat where my old, so we've got her for 3 months each. So this is her first time in this flat. So I'm constantly looking around, making sure she's not destroying my stuff. But sorry. So yes, that kind of conversation about yeah, where we want our pieces to go, both ways. We might start releasing some calls that say like, oh, do you have anything that speaks to economics in particular or whatever, and then let people go from there. But right now we don't limit it, no.
That's brilliant. And it's, I think, that element of collaboration as well, and just kind of pushing that and making sure that all those areas on the, you know, like you say, the sciences and those, the financial side of things as well, that people do realize that there is opportunity for collaboration in those areas, and that if you are in knowledge of those areas, then to share that knowledge is super important. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for that. So if anyone in the room has anything to kind of, or knows people, let them know.
Definitely let me know if there's like, if you've had a look at the site and you wish there was more of something on a certain topic. Like, we're down. There's no one's asked us yet, so
it's wonderful. That's great. It's a nice, like, open, it's, you know, open for growth, which is fantastic. I think we've got a couple more questions. I want to make sure that everyone, that they all get answered if we can. So Kath, if you could read us the next one.
We have two more. That's probably all we'll have time for, but if anyone else has questions, pop them in the chat and I'm sure we can get them to Rihanna post-event or something. But Murphy's actually sent in two really good questions. The first one was, has Project Myopia been involved with any collaborative art shows, or is it something you'd consider in the future? Once,
actually, and I'd love that, more of that. That'd be so nice. Again, sometimes it's like a funding thing, but we won a competition for our 2-year anniversary. We held it at this lovely big warehouse space in London called Ugly Duck. And we had some of our contributors like bring their original pieces. We had a big slideshow of all of the artwork we had. Like it was all very like grungy and beautiful. It was this massive like warehouse, it was cute. Had some, like, you know, some food and drink, a bar and stuff, and then upstairs there was an art exhibition, so it was like we were sharing the space, sharing an audience, sort of people sort of flowing around. We had a panel about decolonizing education. Yeah, it was very cute back in the times when we could go places. And yeah, we'd be more than interested in doing something like that again. Wink wink, nudge nudge, Creative Edinburgh. So yeah, when we can go places. It works well, I promise. I'll tell you more about how it goes, and we can do it.
Yes, definitely keep us posted, and we can have that conversation when we can. Great, thank you so much. And we've got one more question.
Yeah, we've got one last question. Does any of your outreach focus on high school students and empowering them with the knowledge and know-how to go after a uni education?
So that's something that is another one of our sort of long-term goals. The reason why we go for university is because universities are sort of self-governing bodies, so it's much easier to affect change there. And also we focus on the students being able to affect change within their own institution, which is something that we can encourage and sort of foster. When you get to the secondary school, and trust me, I really care about this. This is the sort of thing where it's like, that's when you've got to start being ready to take on the government and the national curriculum, which I'm happy to do, and I will eventually do. But right now, I don't think I have the leverage. But we do some outreach stuff. In fact, I have a talk like literally next week with Paris Academy, which is a majority Black school down in Peckham. And I'll be going to talk about kind of like the pipeline stuff. You know what I mean? Like the fact that it's not, you know, keeping it real with a lot of the students that, like, when you get to university, like a lot of them are predominantly white institutions. And what does that mean coming from a secondary school that was predominantly Black and then going to a space that is like this? Kind of being very honest about what the academic pipeline looks like, but also like encouraging and saying like, I mean, you know, as much as I hate it, I still did it. And I still think it was like the right thing for me to do. So I can definitely go and say that. And, you know, so it is these conversations about access and widening participation. The conversations about changing the curriculum is harder. So when working with sort of high school, secondary school stuff, we very much focus more on pedagogy and pastoral care. you know, how to talk about what the classroom should look like, what you deserve in the classroom, you know, talking to educators about, you know, because secondary school is such a violent space, like it's awful, like even compared to university, sometimes it's even more grim because they've got more time, more face-to-face time to traumatize you with. So I would love to have something to do with that, but again, like it's a future thing, because we would have to be at a point, I think we have to have a really strong database and a really strong track record before we could really get a foot into those conversations. So right now we're sort of limited to the pedagogy pastoral care sort of side of things. We do also, what is it we do? Yes, we've done like a little bit of consultancy stuff. We've done, you know, some outreach stuff like talks and things like that. Beyond that, not enough yet, but it's genuinely our next step. So.
Well, I think everyone, I saw a lot of nodding heads there as well, that secondary school stuff needs to be done. Yes, and I think even on a, you know, very basic level, there's a lot that needs to be rearranged and recalibrated, I think, to better prepare folks for what's next, and also how to work with each other. And I think that's one other thing that you've touched on briefly there is, you know, well, not briefly, the whole project is all one big collaboration, and it would not be possible without all of the people that you're working with.
And that's certainly something secondary school students can be involved in, that kind of conversation about what they wish they'd been able to see on their curriculum. But like, who do they take it to? Like at that point, it kind of is like extracurricular stuff. You know, oh, you should read this in your free time, but it's not like they can campaign to have that be something they're tested on in their GCSE and A-levels, right? So yeah, it's very complex when it comes to that. But last thing, so I mentioned the lack of Black professors in the UK, but there's also the same sorts of issues with like earlier in the pipeline in terms of PhD students. So of roughly 20,000 PhD students that are UKRI funded, so funded by the research institutions, the research councils, only 1.2% of them are Black, which is like around 200. And then of that, only 30 of them are Caribbean. So I'm one of those 30. And like, that's small enough a group that we actually have a WhatsApp chat, you know? So it's like that kind of vibe. And we do a lot of work as a group. We call ourselves the Afro-Caribbean Research Collective. And, you know, the group now is wider than those 30 funded. It's like any Afro-Caribbean researcher. And there's also a sister group, the West African Research Collective, that does a lot of work in terms, like, you know, we're also working on sort of outreach and correcting this pipeline issue as well. So that's not something that is purely, you know, Project Myopia is interested, but there's other institutions working on that as well with a bit more of a foothold, I think.
Yes, so there's that wider collaboration happening even within that space, which is brilliant to see. And I think that's people are finding that that's a way of working that is for the future, and more kind of transparency between organizations and individuals who are working in similar spaces is so important in that. And you know, the way that you've kind of kept yourself transparent and honest and open on your platforms as well is really brilliant, and I think sets a really great precedent for everyone who interacts with you, but also anyone who's kind of drinking all of that knowledge in. So thank you so much. I'm just checking for time. I don't want to keep us going any longer. Kath, how are we doing?
Yeah, we should wrap up now because we've got to squeeze it.
Okay, well, okay, so thank you so much, Rihanna, for sharing your morning with us and all the amazing work that you've been doing. Folks will be sharing all the links and kind of relevant information that we've chatted about in this conversation in the follow-up. So just keep an eye out for that if you haven't already got on the internet and looked all those things up. Rihanna, I don't know if you have any last words or anything that you would like to say.
Just to say thank you so much for having us, and yeah, do please stay in touch and let us know with you know, if you'd be interested in working with us at all. We're always looking for new pitches and collaborations, and if anyone's had an idea based on like what I've spoken about and says, oh, you should probably be doing this, like we're all ears. So yeah, just stay in touch and let me know how you're doing.
Great. And yeah, if anyone has trouble getting in touch with Rhianna and gets in touch with us, we'll pass all those thoughts on. So please do, reach out and share when you have the opportunity. Okay, thank you so much.